This is the Skip Bayless Show, brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Shedeur. I have never seen anything in my almost 50 years of covering the National Football League like what the National Football League just did to Shedeur Sanders. Again, I first guessed all of this. I said before last college football season that Shedeur should go #1 overall, 1-2, or with Travis Hunter 2-1, depending on whether the team drafting first needed a quarterback. And obviously, Tennessee needs a quarterback. Tennessee made, I'm going to say it one last time, a monumental mistake taking Cam Ward over Shedeur Sanders. I'm dug in. I won't flinch on that one. Again, the great Mel Kiper, my guest last week on Skip 1-on-1, ranked Shedeur Sanders 5th overall on his big board and Cam Ward 6th. But now to the guts of this story. I believe the turning point, the flashpoint, the point of no return for Shedeur Sanders came when his father, Dion, did an interview on Dan Patrick's show at the Media Center on Radio Row during Super Bowl week, last Super Bowl week in New Orleans. This happened on February the 7th. Dan Patrick asked Dion if there were NFL teams he didn't want his son to play for. And Dion answered, and I quote, "There's a lot of teams I preferred he didn't play for." That's like saying, aren't there teams you don't want to watch that you just hit the clicker on? You're right. He's talking to Dan. There's teams I didn't want to play for, so why would I want my kids? Come on, man. I'm a dad. I'm a real dad that has a lot of information about the NFL. I know some folks who know some folks who know some folks in the NFL. And I know what's behind the curtain. So definitely I'm going to lead them in the right direction, said Dion of both of his sons to Dan Patrick on February the 7th in New Orleans before the Super Bowl. Now, of course, when it came to Shedeur, that certainly suggested that Dion would orchestrate where his quarterback son was drafted, would engineer it the way Archie Manning once navigated his son from the Chargers to the Giants by forcing a trade. I'm sure you remember. And I, for one, had absolutely no problem with Dion saying that publicly because his son is that valuable. And my first thought when I heard these comments from Dion was, well, Dion definitely wouldn't want a son drafted by a sorry franchise like the Cleveland Browns, where quarterbacks go to die. Now, Dion did tell Dan Patrick there would be no public criticism of teams. Dion said, and I quote, "I would meet with them behind closed doors. I would not call them out, put them on Front Street, talk about their organization because people work too hard for a guy like me ignorantly saying something wrong. I would meet with them privately and talk about my concerns so we can have an understanding," said Dion to Dan Patrick before the Super Bowl on February 7th. Dion said he'd already met with some teams. He wouldn't say how many or which. So his message was already being sent behind closed doors to various teams. And you want to know what a whole lot of teams were saying behind closed doors? They were saying F Dion and F his son. How dare him compare himself and his situation with his son to the first family of football, to the beloved Mannings, to Father Archie, to sons Peyton and Eli. How dare him? F that. At that point, it had become clear that Deion was even representing his sons, both Shedeur and Shiloh, as their agent. And the NFL was already saying, F that, F you, Deion. We don't do business that way in this league. So look, I'm pretty sure a whole lot of old school coaches in college and pro football, I'm pretty sure they resent Deion's coaching approach. Do you remember what Oregon's Dan Lanning said? This is 2 years ago after the Ducks crushed Colorado. He made a pointed comment saying that his team focuses on winning, not on getting social media clicks. Other coaches despise that seemingly everything Colorado does behind the scenes is videotaped and it is posted for all to see, which just happens to be the way of the world now for just about every 18 to 22-year-old, and that's who plays for Colorado. That's what college football and basketball and all sports are all about right here, right now. So Dan Lanning's obviously a white coach, but 2 years ago, you might remember Jay Norvell, Colorado State's black head coach, also took a shot at Deion. Jay Norvell said that Jay Norvell, does interviews when he does behind closed doors, indoors. He takes off his hat and his sunglasses as his mother taught him to do. What? You, Jay Norvell, took that shot at Deion Sanders for wearing a hat and sunglasses for inside interviews? So I'm pretty sure old school coaches and NFL execs of all colors resent the way Deion runs his program in Boulder because, man, Deion is bolder and bolder. He even has a DJ to hype his team in the pregame locker room and the halftime locker room. And, of course, he had Lil Wayne lead his team out of the tunnel onto the field for kickoff, and Deion's sideline is just packed with star athletes and legendary retired stars and rappers and entertainers. Games are events, they're happenings, they're college football Coachellas. After all, Deion the player was Neon Deion, prime time. Always leading the league in brash and in arrogant. But here was the thing about Deion, the football player. He always backed it up. Deion Sanders was the greatest cornerback ever, greatest all-around athlete I ever saw. Deion Sanders, I covered him, the Dallas Cowboys. He worked hard. He played hard. He backed it the F up. But so many coaches and so many NFL executives were not great football players, even good football players. Some of them didn't even play high school football. And they are threatened and they are resentful. And they are even flat out jealous of Deion's athletic stature. Their attitude is, yeah, you could get away with being Neon Deion on the football field, but you can't play that game on the sideline as a head football coach, even though Colorado did sell out every game and did become the hottest draw on national TV in this country. Yet I'm sure NFL execs and coaches seethe and they curse when they read or they hear that Deion will be the next great NFL coach. I'm sure that deep down they fear he will be, maybe even taking over their organization. So you can bet those NFL phone lines burned up after Deion made those comments to Dan Patrick back during Super Bowl week, February 7th. You can bet executives and head coaches and assistant coaches were calling their buddies and lots of other organizations saying, can you believe effing Deion Sanders says he's going to pull an Archie Manning? Now, look, I'm not saying this was official out-and-out collusion, secret memo collusion. No, this was just a whole lot of NFL people talking to a whole lot of other NFL people saying F Deion and F his son. No doubt a whole lot of them were thinking, we'll show Deion orchestrating. And a whole lot of NFL people began trying to nitpick Shedeur to smithereens, even fabricating a whole lot of phantom criticisms. Then came the combine. Then came Josina Anderson reporting that a quarterback coach for a team drafting in the top 7 found Shedeur to be undraftably brash and arrogant in his interview with that coach's staff at the combine. What? Yeah, Shedeur he's confident. Don't you want your face of the franchise quarterback to be confident? But he's also a really good kid who was raised the right way, who plays the right way, who's as physically tough a college quarterback as I've ever closely observed, who is deadly accurate and deadly late game clutch. What? Yeah, I got it. Shedeur, he made $3 million last year in Boulder, and so he did own 3 exotic cars, and he does occasionally drape himself in jewelry like a lot of kids do. But you don't think he can handle his money? He's had money his whole life. I would think that would be seen as a plus. If he gets some money in the NFL, I think he'll be just fine with it, don't you? So then Deion Sanders told me on my Skip One-on-One show that he did call the head coach of that team whose quarterback coach blasted Shedeur, and that the head coach told Deion, according to Deion, that Shedeur did not come across as brash and arrogant in their interview with him at the combine. But the damage was done. The demon seeds were planted. The phone lines were burning, just burning and burning and burning up around the league. I just hear it now. Shakes me to my bones. See, the kid's uncoachable. Like father, like son. Deion spoiled him rotten. No way you want this kid as the face of your franchise. Blah, 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 blah. The NFL that I've known for almost 50 years operates on sheep think. I've said this many times. So many people I've gotten to know very well, who ran or now still run drafts for teams, are just not very smart. They're all Peter Principle products, not very perceptive. They're prone to hearing a little dirt and taking it right to heart. So many idiots running drafts out there, they just think like sheep. They run scared. They actually read and value all the mock drafts by people who know less than they know because they don't know. Shedeur was such an easy target because of the jealousy and the fear of his father. Who wanted to draft Shedeur, risk Deion eventually taking over the franchise, bringing in his own people, smarter than you and you and you and you. So every single NFL team convinced itself that drafting Shedeur was a bad idea. I even heard, quote unquote, he isn't the athlete his father is. What? Who is? But if you watch the way I watch Shedeur, you know Shedeur is no pocket statue that he can move. That he's as accurate rolling right or left as he is with his feet set in the pocket. That he ran for lots of big first downs on called quarterback draws, and running the read option to the edge. You'd know if you just watch the tape, this kid is a baller who plays bigger than his 6'1.5" and 212 pounds. What is not to love about Shedeur Sanders? Deion Sanders raised this young man to be an to be a star NFL quarterback in a pro-style offense from the start. Surrounded him with greatness. His father isn't a detriment. He's a huge advantage. Shedeur has greatness flowing through his veins. What am I missing here? I had no idea, no earthly idea that starting Thursday night and then all through Friday night, the NFL was dead set on teaching Deion a lesson. Tennessee never even considered Shedeur. How did they get away with that? Neither did Cleveland, which passed on them the first 6 times it had a chance to draft Shedeur Sanders. And Cleveland took Dillon Gabriel 50 slots ahead of Shedeur. Dillon Gabriel. I watched every snap Dillon Gabriel took at Oklahoma. It's my team. Dillon's pretty good. Nice arm, smart, tough, surprisingly mobile. A little better, I think, than Tua. It's another sort of short, stocky lefty from Hawaii. But trust me, Dillon Gabriel isn't in Shedeur's galaxy as an NFL quarterback. 50 slots he went to Cleveland ahead of Shedeur. The Giants, of course, passed on Shedeur at 3, then traded back into the first round to take Jackson Dart. The Giants might as well have been drafting by throwing Dart. I hate to say this, but even Tom Brady's team passed on Shedeur at 6. Reportedly, Brady was involved in the Raiders' draft decisions. Obviously, Pete Carroll, their new head coach, wanted his guy from Seattle, Geno Smith, so they acquired Geno. I get that, but Brady did mentor and did help coach Shedeur beginning in high school. I don't know, maybe GOAT Brady will prove to be just as bad at judging talent as GOAT Jordan was as GM in Charlotte. And I do remind you that John Elway, pretty great quarterback, could pick his nose better than he picked quarterbacks as Broncos GM. And as my man Mel Kiper said on ESPN, the NFL has always been clueless about picking quarterbacks. It has. See the greatest quarterback ever, Brady, going in the 6th round. See the 1A greatest, Joe Montana, going in the 3rd round. See 2-time MVP Lamar Jackson lasting to the final pick of the 1st round, as well as Dan Marino, probably the greatest thrower of the football ever, going 27th overall. But this was different. This was personal. This was shameful. This was a black eye for the NFL, which basically blackballed Shedeur Sanders. And for 2 long nights, I sat on the edge of my seat waiting for the announcement that never came. I waited and I waited. No. I waited 3 rounds, no Shedeur. No way. No way. But late Friday night, I saw a quote from my man, Jerry Jones. Quote was raving about Shedeur's football character. Jerry does know Shedeur, and he definitely knows Deion, and I do think he has high regard for both. And I thought, maybe this story will have a happy ending. Several NFL sources texted me Saturday morning saying the same thing, something like, now that this has become the biggest story in sports, Jerry's the one owner who will consider all the publicity a plus instead of a distracting minus. He'll take Shedeur. You know what I thought? My Cowboys will luck into taking Shedeur. He'll fall right into their laps. He'll sit behind Dak for 2 years. Then he'll go win us a Super Bowl. It is meant to be. It is written in the stars. The kid who grew up in Dallas will finally lead the Cowboys back to the promised land. this was a heaven-sent scenario. The Cowboys had 2 picks in the 5th round, 2 in the 6th, 3 in the 7th. So Jerry was already dancing over his picks in the first 3 rounds. Certainly could justify finally using the first 5th round pick on Shedeur, who in round 5 wouldn't command much money. So it wouldn't threaten the cap. You already got the players that you wanted in the first 3 rounds. You had all those multiple picks thereafter. But here was the one problem. The Cowboys did not have a 4th round pick. That pick had been used at last season's trade deadline, acquiring Jonathan Mingo from Carolina. Jonathan Mingo in 8 games for the Cowboys down the stretch last year. Mingo caught 5 total passes. A wasted 4th round pick. And so as Saturday began, it was 9 a.m. out here in Los Angeles, noon Eastern, I had to sweat through the entire 4th round, waiting for the Cowboys' next pick, which didn't come until 149th in the 5th round. I hate to say this, but Jonathan Mingo cost me Shedeur Sanders. I believe that with all my heart and soul, and will go to my grave believing that. Jonathan Mingo, bingo. Unfortunately, there is one other owner in the National Football League who can act just as kooky as Jerry can, who's liable to do just about anything at any moment, who's so filthy rich he doesn't really care what anyone else thinks of him. He was the owner who told his draft staff to trade up 4 spots and take a falling Johnny Manziel. The Browns went from 26th to 22nd to take Johnny Manziel. And this man was the owner who plunged on Deshaun Watson, who was basically bidding against himself. It was flat out kooky. Who, despite Deshaun's awful off-field issues, gave the Texans 3 first-round picks for Deshaun Watson and gave Deshaun Watson a guaranteed $230 million. That owner, that guy in Cleveland, that guy Jimmy Haslam, suddenly decided, what the hell? If nobody else will take Shedeur, I'll take him. This wasn't about his GM or his head coach, who had already taken Dylan Gabriel over Shedeur and had already passed on Shedeur 6 times. 6. No, this was about Jimmy Haslam, desperate for a star quarterback, about Haslam, who had been to dinner with Shedeur and Dion before the draft, who did like the hell out of both of them. I have no doubt Haslam saw Jerry coming at 144. And if he didn't see it, then Howie Roseman did see it. Howie Roseman is the best GM in all of sports. I say it again and again and again. Howie Roseman is the one GM who is not a clueless fool. Unfortunately for me, Howie Roseman is the brains behind the Philadelphia Eagles, who happen to occupy the same division as my Dallas Cowboys. Howie knows Shedeur will be very, very good. Howie knows Dion would be the perfect fit as head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. Howie did not want Shedeur and or Dion in Dallas in the NFC East. So Howie traded pick 144 to Cleveland, 5 picks ahead of Jerry's next pick. Ka-boom. Howie Roseman got us again, and my fairy tale turned right into a nightmare. Cleveland was the worst place Shedeur could go, the single worst place. The executives in Cleveland, the coaching staff in Cleveland obviously did not want Shedeur. So now ahead of Shedeur on the depth chart are Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett and Dylan Gabriel, and I guess Deshaun Watson, who did tear his Achilles, but still on the roster. So Shedeur is now in a cold weather city in a division featuring the NFL's two best quarterbacks, in my opinion, Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson. And these Browns were all-time dumb enough, sitting in the number 2 overall pick, to trade Travis Hunter to Jacksonville? What? At least Shedeur could have been reunited with his college teammate and soulmate, Travis. Nope. These fools traded Travis Hunter, who will become the greatest two-way player in NFL history. They traded him to Jacksonville. I don't care what they got back. It's not enough. And I'm sure coaches and execs around pro and college football are laughing their asses off. Deion orchestrated Shedeur all the way to Cleveland in the 5th round. Ha, 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 ha. I can hear them now. They're just echoing in my psyche. It just makes me sick. And remember, Shiloh didn't get drafted either. I thought he might go in the 6th or 7th round as a safety. And Shiloh, while chuckling, said the other day that, well, he finally had to fire his dad as his agent, and he did sign with Drew Rosenhaus, who did help him sign as an undrafted free agent with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Blackballed. So now I must cling to what Deion did say a few days back. Deion said, when something becomes inexplicably ludicrous, you just have to believe it's a God thing, that God is about to work in a very mysterious way. I loved it that Shedeur and his brother danced and celebrated when Shedeur was taken by the Browns. Shedeur danced and celebrated. I loved that. And I loved it that he took the very highest road in that group interview that he did with the Browns media. He refused to comment on anything but how excited he is to go to work in Cleveland. Shedeur said that, and I quote, all that negativity doesn't matter now. No. Now its only use is to fuel the rest of Shedeur Sanders' pro career. Now, every game Shedeur plays will be against teams that passed on him multiple times. Who knows? I don't know. Maybe the Browns will be dumb enough to trade Shedeur to a team desperate for a quarterback late in camp, or maybe at next season's trade deadline. I don't know. All I know for sure is this. If some team ever does give Shedeur Sanders an opportunity, maybe that'll be the Cleveland Browns. But if any team ever does, he will shame the entire NFL just as it shamed him and shamed itself.